Welcome back to Berean 2017, session 1. This is the third part. We're looking at the late Bronze Age, 1500 to 1200 BCE. And earlier on, we looked at Abraham's time, 2200 to 1500. Now we're looking at the period of Moses, 1500 to 1200 BCE. The first thing I want to show you is something called a pyramid text. Some of the oldest religious texts in the world. This is from Pharaoh Pepi I, the pyramid of Saqqara, the Saqqara 6th dynasty. Look at the date, 2300 to 2181 BC, right? And in Egypt, this gave the formula of a king's ascent to heaven. So you can see the idea of ascent to heaven is a very ancient concept. It's not new at all. And you can see ideas of this in the resurrection, in going up to the clouds, in the New Testament idea. If you want to see this, and Michael is not here. When you go to London, there's a museum that is part of the University College of London, UCL, called the Petrie Museum. It has 80,000 artifacts. About only 10% are out at any one time. But if you go to the website, they do all-day tours of the artifacts 3 or 4 times a year. So this is Petrie. The interchange between Egyptians and the Hebrews during the hundreds of years that Jacob's descendants lived in Egypt were extensive. So think about it. According to the Old Testament, Jacob's descendants, including Joseph, of course, they were basically Egyptians for over 400 years. That's an awful long time. How long is that? That's longer than America has been America. Think about that. That's a very long time, right? 400 years is almost going to the time, back to the time of Jamestown in the 1600s in America. That's how far back it goes. Moses, Aaron, Miriam, Phinehas, and many Levite names were Egyptian names, and many Semitic words entered the Egyptian vocabulary as 29 phonemes during the New Kingdom period. By 1994, James Hoch identified 595 different Semitic words in Egyptian inscriptions from 1500 to 650 BCE. Hebrew monotheism has its roots in Egypt's tendency to concentrate the attributes of its deities into a single sun god. So this idea of Egyptians looking at all the deities, and they said, in a sense, they are all expressions of the sun god, one god, almost similar to the Hindu idea of many, many gods, but they are basically expressions of the Trinity, the Tribhuti. You've got the Brahma, the creator, destroyer, the preserver, right? So, and many parts of Hindu will say, but at the end of the day, they're actually monotheists. There's actually one God with expressions of his characteristics. So you have all this sort of flux between one God, 3 gods, and many gods. It's not very clean cut. It's not so simple as some religions are monotheistic, some are polytheistic. Every religion we know has elements of all 3, which means at some point in time they were polytheistic. And then at some point in time, don't ask me why, 3 is a very easy number to think about, the tripod of gods. And then became 1. Even in Buddhism, you've got the 3 jewels of Buddhism, the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma, the teaching, the collector of priests, and so you have all these ideas of how many gods there are. I mentioned this, by the way, when you get your slides, if you open your slides, you'll find under the footnotes, under the slides, I put in references to websites you can attend to. Okay, so don't worry about it. You can see it all there. And don't let this be the final slides. I want to know how far I can go with this. When we're all done, I'll revise all the slides and add in things that we don't have time to cover here, some pictures and maps and all that, and then you'll get the full slide stuff. And so my point is, if you can, don't print out these many slides, like 60, 70 pages. It's not worth it because this is a teaching tool right now. I want to add more stuff for you to gather together. The Hittites. The Hittites are another very interesting group. We didn't even know they existed as an actual people until very late in history when they were discovered. That's partly because they're in a very central part of Turkey. Turkey is a very, very big country. And the part of Turkey is kind of hard to get to. And I didn't get there until 2014. I wanted to go for a long time, but it's just a lot of work to get there. But the Hittites are very important, especially to understand the idea of treaties, to understand the idea of Egypt. They were contemporaries of Egypt in the Middle Kingdom, and they were fighting the Egyptians. Apart from Ebla and Mari in modern Syria, the most extensive collection of 15th to 13th century BCE tablets come from the Hittite Empire in what is now Turkey. If you go to YouTube and you type the Hittites, there's a really, really wonderful docudrama with Jeremy Irons as the narrator. And it gives you a really pretty accurate picture of what the Hittites were and how they come to be. And of course, in terms of genealogy, the Hittites are important because Solomon is half Hittite. Think about that. That alone should stun you right there. Oh, I thought he was Jewish all along. Now, the Hittites in Egypt fought each other and made peace treaties when wars ended. The Old Testament writers adopted and adapted such treaties by replacing any reference to polytheism with monotheism to create divine covenants between God and Israel. So when you read the Old Testament about this is the covenant between God and the people and all that, right? Scholars have identified, and you can see the third paragraph, both biblical and non-biblical treaties possess 5 characteristics. They identify the covenant maker. So in this case, God, the God Yahweh, the God so-and-so. Right? Number 2, a resume of previous and present relationships. You are my people, now you're not. Why do you do this? So you can see that motif. The third one is stipulations or laws. You're supposed to do this and you didn't. This is what you're supposed to do. All these laws. A deposit in the sanctuary for public reading on auspicious occasions. You find it in the Jewish culture as well. You should take this law. In Jeremiah is different, right? In your hearts, the law is in your hearts, but others in stone and this. And then bring it out on auspicious days and read to the public to remind them. Sounds familiar to you now? We do it in church as well. Every Sunday, we take out a repository called the Bible, and then we remind, right? And the last one, a list of blessings and curses. This one we kind of don't do quite as much, especially the curse bit. Curses are not very good PR, but blessings are very good PR. But look at it and you'll see that these characteristics of treaties, or what we call covenants in the Christian world, has its roots in the Hittite world between Hittites and Egyptians. Look at the next slide and you'll see the famous Treaty of Kadesh between Egypt and the Hittites, now in the Istanbul Archaeological Museum. I'm going to pass this around and show them. This is a picture of the Hittite treaty, and I got it I think just last year in Istanbul. And there we see for the first time we have a treaty written out so neatly to explain what happened. If you just show it to the people on the, that would be great. But this treaty is quite interesting because if you go to Egypt, you will find the Egyptian story of what actually happened, and this story doesn't match. So both sides claim to their people who actually won the war, and both of them kind of fit. And we don't exactly know whether the Egyptians fit or the Hittites fit, but we think it's the Egyptians. Ramesses II who.
So there's 2 writings then.
2 writings of the same event. And one of them said, yeah, we beat them up, but we are generous, let them go. The other guy said, and this guy said, we came to a standstill. We beat each other and we can't get anywhere, so we decided, why kill each other over this? The likelihood is normally the one who's more generous.
Which one was this, on the Egyptian side or the Hebrew side?
This is the Hittite.
The Hittite.
Yeah, Hittite side, yeah. Because Turkey is where Hittites were.
Oh.
The Egyptian side is on a wall in Egypt today. So you go to Egypt for a holiday, for vacation, and you normally go down the Nile River or Gog River and go to Etna, Komombo, and all these various places. By the 3rd day, you're kind of zoned out because they all look alike, they sound alike, and the guy is just trying to get it out of his system, telling you what happened. But if you go with some background, it's going to help a lot. So even with this background, once you know what this is, when you go to any museum, oh, so that's the one Ron talked about. The Treaty of Kadesh. That's going to help you, right? Because like all museums, this museum also doesn't say a whole lot about what it is. That's an annoying thing about it. Abrahamic faith and Moses, the next slide. Abraham was Mesopotamian, not Jewish. He did not speak Hebrew because that language did not exist in 1800 BCE. God, and not Yahweh yet, it was then called Elohim, and Yahweh was a different name that came after Moses came down and said the name is Yahweh. Remember that? So in terms of timeline, think of it this way. Moses existed around 500 years after Abraham. So if Moses was the one who identified God as Yahweh, by definition, Abraham could not, because Moses hasn't mentioned yet the name called Yahweh. And he was to be a blessing to all nations. Bear this in mind. If you take one thing away from you about the importance of Mesopotamia and Egypt in this today's session, it's the fact that the very beginnings of what we now call Judaism was meant to be, in a sense, very pluralistic. It was all the nations. It was never meant to be a single nation's God, partly because it wasn't yet a nation. It was nomadic people moving around, right? The Abrahamic faith is a universal rather than a Hebrew or a Jewish faith. It evolved to become that, but it wasn't at the time. Moses was an Egyptian of Hebrew origins. When you say Hebrew origins, you almost always mean the nomadic origins. That's what you're referring to. It's apparent. And he was also not Jewish. At Mount Sinai, Moses announced God's name and formed the people of Israel, composed of Egyptian Hebrews and non-Hebrews. Written much later, when Israel was already a nation, the writers referred to Israel even though no such country or people existed before the Exodus period. So when you read the Genesis text, it sounds as if, Israel really goes far back. After all, wasn't Jacob called Israel, right? But Israel yet wasn't a country. It was a concept, a name. It simply means God is on our side. The Abrahamic faith was not a religion, but a response to God's call to people everywhere. So in the beginning, Abrahamic ideas were not what you think it is. So here are the major themes you can think about. Themes of Mesopotamia. For those of you joining us in April, when we go to the Museum for the Ancient Near East Gallery, we're going to look at these sort of themes, okay? So look at the slides. And that's really it. I want to, the others are, you can read for yourself. I want to just make sure that when we get together next week, please read the slides ahead of time. They'll be sent to you by Wednesday, okay? Okay, so, bye guys. Okay.